What did you say? Flagpole.
Take your stinking paw off me, you damn dirty ape!
No! You're a wizard, Harry.
In spite of everything you've done for them, eventually they will hate you.
And I care! What is the deal?
No, do me a favor, Captain. Go fuck yourself.
Language.
Why so serious?
What's your favorite scary movie?
I'm vengeance.
Avengers!
Assemble.
Welcome back to That's So Random, the most random movie podcast on the internet. And I'm Braden. Today with me is not Andrew. It's Darren McClemens
It's
from
me,
the Pipeline
Deadpool.
Podcast. Oh, it's Deadpool himself.
Nope, it's Deadpool. I'm definitely not Darren. Give me a
Definitely
Chimichanga
not
voice.
Darren. We are joined by Deadpool Wade Wilson himself. Just so happening to promote the Pipeline Podcast.
Yep. I just, I gotta do the Lord's work,
Yeah, Andrew just doesn't want to join us for these good X-Men films, evidently.
He's
So
like,
we've been doing this. We've been doing this all in anticipation, all for the build-up of Deadpool 3, and we are finally talking about the
Let's
Deadpool
go!
movies themselves. So I guess starting with Deadpool 1, the original, starting in 2016. What do we think about this movie, Darren? What do we think about it?
Oh, worst movie in this universe. Absolute. No, it's kidding. No, I actually think Deadpool it wasn't one of the first ones I watched because I talked about it on here. I watched Last Stand and I watched Days of Future Past, but before starting my big X-Men watch through, this was one of the first ones I ended up watching because I felt like everyone was talking about it. This was back in 2018, 2019. Everyone was talking about all these movies, and I was like, I want to check this out. And I'll be honest, I still don't know if there is a comic book movie quite like Deadpool. It is still kind of the only thing of its kind, which is kind of insane to say with all the other superhero stuff we have out there now.
Yeah, the first Deadpool is definitely the first X-Men film I actually saw in theaters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this and X-Men Apocalypse were my first in 2016. I hadn't seen Days of Future Past, First Class, any of the original X-Men's in theaters, so Deadpool was my very first, and it's a very memorable theater experience. I actually think I saw it twice in the theater because of how much I loved it the first time around. And I've seen this movie so many times since it first came out. I saw it 2 or 3 times in the theater, and I've seen it probably 8 to 10 times total. I've seen it
Oh my
so many
God.
times that, yeah, it's just awesome. It's an awesome comic book movie, an awesome movie in general for me, and it's a spectacular comedy as well. It's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen.
It's a hoot and a holler, and I think I do think one of the most charming things about this movie is honestly just the behind the scenes stuff as well. It's not just it's a fun little comic book movie. Ryan Reynolds actively fighting for this movie to come out, actively pushing for it, where the studio was like, I don't know, which I can somewhat get from a studio because I think it is a very different kind of comic book movie. Was this the first rated R superhero movie? No, Blade was rated R, huh?
Blade was rated R, Watchmen was rated R, so yeah, there were
Gotcha.
rated R comic book movies before this, but this was definitely the first rated R comic book movie to make as much money as it did. It was the first truly rated R blockbuster per se, because I want to say this is the first rated R movie to ever make over $300-400 million, because it made around 760 million plus at the box office, which is absolutely insane for a rated R movie. We're in 2024 right now, and we have the hindsight of knowing that the only rated R movie in history to make over $1 billion is the first Joker movie.
Yeah.
Which, that's just bonkers to think of. There's only been one rated R movie ever to make over $1 billion in this day of age, where so many movies make over $1 billion, but there's only been one rated R movie to do it. And I think Deadpool and Wolverine may be the second. I think.
There's a lot of conversations at the moment where could this one make $1 billion? And I'm not fully convinced yet, but I think it has a really good chance. Like, I think
I'm
it
not fully
could.
convinced either, but seeing how good Inside Out 2 has done this summer,
Yeah.
like, it's clear that the box office, the movie theater isn't completely dead, so I think Deadpool and Wolverine has a very, very good chance of making over $1 billion. I don't know if it will. I think if it doesn't, it will at least
Yeah.
get close.
If it wasn't rated R, I think it would. Like, I think it would be an automatic $1 billion hit. It just rated R is such a hard hill to climb. Like it's really because you're cutting off like a good chunk of what the MCU audience is, which is typically like families and children and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
but
like,
seeing as like the first Joker movie made above $1 billion,
yeah,
I feel like Deadpool and Wolverine is much more of a family film than
sure,
the first Joker movie was. So I think
I
there
agree.
is absolutely a chance that this breaks $1
I
billion.
still don't even know how Joker did that. I
I
have
don't
no idea
either.
how
It's
they pulled that
amazing to
off.
me because I'm like, who is taking their family to see Joker? Who is taking their
Yeah.
goddamn kids to see this movie? Who goes into this movie being like, oh yeah, I'm sure my kids will enjoy this? Like, your kids aren't gonna get a single frame of this movie.
And it's so like, not to get way off track on Joker, but like it's also such a controversial movie. Like, it's a movie people walked out of and were like, I don't like this, and people still went to go see it. It's crazy.
It's a movie I really enjoy, but it's an uncomfortable watch. So
I'm never watching
I
it
can
again. That's the thing.
understand why people don't like thoroughly enjoy the movie. It's
Yeah.
a very psychological and like mentally involved film, but it's not like super enjoyable. Like, oh, take the family to go see this movie type of film. So I'm surprised it cracked $1 billion
Yes.
as well.
Crazy. But no, can I say, like, again, it's been a couple years since I watched the first Deadpool movie, and I think the thing that for me draws me in, because I'm someone that like inherently isn't super into like the super raunchy comedies. Like, that's just not typically my cup of tea. But I think what really makes this work is obviously, yes, there's sex jokes, there's the way Deadpool kind of works is his type of humor, but also it's so wholesome as well. Like, it's such a like relatably wholesome kind of like relatable type of movie, and like I love how, I don't know, simple, like it's kind of a simple movie. Like the at least the first Deadpool movie, it's about a man trying to get his girlfriend back. That's the plot of the film, and like I think that's what kind of why it stands out to me.
Yeah, the first film is definitely like okay, funnily enough, I think you can kind of compare the first two Deadpools to like the Ryan Gosling action comedies. You can compare Deadpool and Deadpool 2 to say The Nice Guys and The Fall Guy because the first Deadpool is definitely like kind of a romantic film. It's like this
It
film
is.
between Wade and Vanessa, their relationship. And then the second one is sort of kind of a bromance between like Wade and Cable.
Yeah.
And like the Ryan Gosling films I'm talking about are like, oh, The Nice Guys. It's like a bromance between Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe and The Nice Guys. And then even though they aren't connected in any way through like just standard means like the first Deadpool movies are, like they're
Hmm.
obviously a sequel onto one another, the same character features in both. Ryan Gosling is just an actor that features in both of these movies, but the Fall Guy is very much like a romantic comedy opposed to a bromance comedy, which is kind of like the Deadpool and Deadpool 2. Like Deadpool 1 is definitely a romantic comedy, and Deadpool 2 is kind of a bromantic comedy.
And I'd argue it's the only superhero movie or comic book movie out there that is kind of exclusively a romance, right? Where like you could throw in like Thor, or you could throw in Spider-Man, and those have strong like romantic elements to it. But I'd say at the end of the day, Deadpool is full stop a love story. It's a romantic comedy at its core. Like way before it's about superheroes and supervillains and saving people. The main plot of the movie is about him falling in love with this girl and saving this girl and trying to get back with this girl. Like, that's at its core. And I think that's something people have been missing. There's been a huge conversation like within the superhero world, the like comic book movie like community, where it's like we want more love stories in our superheroes. Like, look at the MCU right now. What's one prominent love story? Like, what's one prominent like relationship? There isn't one, right? Everyone they had are either broken up or they're dead or they're not together at the moment. And I feel like that's something people have been really craving. And I think watching this one, I was like, oh yeah, this is a great one. Great.
Yeah, when you mentioned like, oh, MCU, what's the most recent relationship you can think of? I'm like, Peter Parker and MJ, but that was
And
all
they're
the way
broken
back
up.
in No Way Home.
Yeah, but also they're not currently together. Like they at the end of the movie, they're not officially. And even like Deadpool, by movie 3 in this upcoming movie, they're not together. They're broken up, which is like kind of sad. So it's like, oh man, that I miss like, and I think Superman is going to do this. Obviously not the MCU, but like I think Superman is going to be a full-on love story or have strong love story elements to it. So I think I'm excited for Clark and Lois Lane.
Have I not been paying enough attention to the Deadpool and Wolverine trailers? Are they broken up?
I don't know if they've said it in the trailers, but either the director or something, they've said that they are currently not together.
What's the point of bringing her back to life at the end of Deadpool 2 then? Spoiler alert for what we're going to get into, but
yeah, potentially. I hope I didn't spoil the movie for anyone, but and I'll try and look up the article where they said that. But yeah, they're currently like from my understanding, they couldn't make it work, I guess.
what's the point of bringing her back then in that regard? Like, there's no
Yeah.
way they don't get back together by the end.
I really hope so because
Otherwise, there's no point of
relationship.
bringing her back. Like, there's no point of keeping her alive come the end of Deadpool 2 if you're not going to keep those two characters together. Because if you weren't going to keep those
I
two
also
characters
think
together, why not just keep her dead when she dies at the beginning of Deadpool 2?
I also wonder how we end Deadpool 3 as well. Because like, are we ending it with Wade going over to the MCU? If that's the case, she might not have a Vanessa, right? Like, are we killing off this Vanessa again? I don't know.
That's what I'm wondering too, because I'm like,
Or
I don't
do
know,
we
when
do
it
it
comes
like
to the MCU, like the TVA, variants and stuff like that, like is bringing Vanessa back just making her a variant unto herself. Like she's not actually Vanessa, she's just a variant of Vanessa, and like this
sure,
Wolverine is a variant of Wolverine. Like none of these characters are actually themselves besides Wade.
sure,
So yeah, no, I'm curious of
craziness.
how Deadpool and Wolverine will end as well.
Yeah, but no, I actually think that's some of my favorite stuff in the movie. Like, there's that like 10-minute long sequence of them kind of like falling in love, like them meeting, falling in love, and I think it's one of the funnest sequences in the movie. It's because again, there's nothing else kind of like that in any other comic book movie of just like
When they go through
obviously
the holidays, is that what you're talking about?
yeah, like they meet and they fall in love, and obviously it's a very like visual movie. So obviously there's been no other superhero movie quite like that in that extent, right? But also just like taking the time, getting to know her and like their relationship, I think is just a really interesting element to the movie that I personally really enjoy.
It's a very integral scene to the movie, but it's also like a scene that lets you know right away, like, yeah, this is a rated R movie. Like,
Oh,
oh,
sure.
happy International Women's Day, and
That was
she's
funny.
just, yeah, she's doing him from behind.
There's that
And
really good joke.
then there's Happy Halloween's Day, and he's like going down on her with the vampire teeth.
Yeah. There's that scene where it's like if your one leg is Thanksgiving and the other one is Christmas. Like it was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I love that moment very much. It's
Oh, it's so funny.
it like elevates and prolongs the story, but it's also just one of the funniest scenes in the movie as well.
Hmm.
And during like the flashback of Wade when he's still just kind of Ryan Reynolds before his mutation takes form, he's like, I'm living to the
Yeah.
age of 112 and then dying, like the city of Detroit. Oh, that was one of the funniest jokes in the movie for me.
Great.
Uh,
But
and that's when
yeah.
we first get mentioned in the Deadpool as well. The Deadpool is just like this event among assassins and mercenaries, I guess. Like, oh, these mercenaries are going toe to toe, and whoever dies, that's who dies, and people are betting on it. It's called the Deadpool, and that's where
Yeah,
Wade's name comes from.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what's your thoughts on just like the wall breakingness of this type of movie? Because I feel like wall breaking has become significantly more popular since Deadpool has come out and this movie has gotten really popular. Like obviously things like She-Hulk has got has done this, and a lot of other movies have started doing it since then. Is that an element of this movie that like you like?
I mean, I like it, but that's just because I knew that was the thing with Deadpool before the movies.
Hmm.
If it was to be just a cinematic original character, I don't know how I would feel because I knew this was just part of Deadpool, Wade Wilson's character before going in. So like I
Yeah.
expected that out of the movie. So
Yeah, no, I mean, I
it's
think
kind of a different situation opposed to like if you go into the original film with an original character, like if they were to break the fourth wall, circumstance would kind of depend on that, like if it makes sense or not. But just knowing this character from the comics, you would expect that.
sure. And I also think, when did the first one come out? Was it 2016?
Yeah,
2015?
2016, February of
2016.
2016. I saw
Okay.
this movie in the
Yeah, I
theaters
mean,
and
up
I
until this
loved
point,
it.
I feel like up until this point, there was such a like superhero movies are kind of in their peak. Like what, 2016, 2017 through 2019 or so. Like
Like
these were
probably like
top of the world.
2012 through like from Avengers
Yeah,
1 to
sure.
Endgame, like comic book movies were in their peak. And
In their
probably about
peaks, yes.
2012 to 2019, yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think a movie like this came out at a perfect time because obviously people know the tropes, they know what to expect. MCU has kind of set a standard. DC, say what you will about the era, but they also kind of set a standard for what you can expect. And like, I feel like, and then we're at the state now with comic book movies where I say like, if you have to do different stuff with them, you have to be able to stand out within the crowd because there are so many of these stuff coming out, and I think Deadpool does that. Like they almost like defined this genre of like silly, crazy superhero movies or even just shows. I feel like we get a lot of that with shows now where like now we have stuff like The Boys and Doom Patrol and Umbrella Academy, which kind of live in the same kind of set. Even like Harley Quinn, I feel like kind of has that similar vibe to it, where the raunchy or weird or crazy superhero project. And I think this is kind of the start of that genre.
Yeah, that's fair. It's definitely like it's not the first rated R comic book movie or anything, but it's definitely like the first.
Raunchy,
It,
I'd say.
it yeah, I guess raunchy type comic book
Hmm.
film and a set of precedents for movies and TV going forward, which I can appreciate to an extent because
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, you can only have so much of this like PG 13 comic book type stuff that is like only for
yeah,
families. Like you need something that's kind of different. You need a certain sensibility that is set apart from what you're accustomed to because you're like,
I
okay,
agree.
yeah, I get this. This is awesome, but like I would like something else at the same time. I'd like something more adult. I'd like something more violent. And Deadpool like accommodates that.
I agree, and I think especially in contrast to the rest of these Fox movies, like it felt like for the most part they were always trying to be very serious, very grounded, and obviously Days of Future Past and First Class, I feel like we're trying to up the comic book beat, but like there's nothing more comic book feeling than I think Deadpool in this universe. Like nothing to me even comes close to just feeling like a living comic book as these movies do, and they're allowed to just kind of like, it feels like they're just kind of allowed to do their own thing. Like they live in this little separate world where you can make fun of the other movies and you can poke at Marvel and Disney and all this kind of fun stuff. So I love it. It's great.
Yeah, the first Deadpool really felt like it was just free to do whatever it wanted to do. It had no restraints, and you very much felt that watching it in the
Yeah.
theater or at home. And that's kind
Uh,
of the beauty of the film. Like it's allowed to do whatever it wants, and you feel like the creative freedom of the movie displaying itself on screen.
I agree. What do you think of the villain?
The villain, Ajax slash
Yeah.
Francis. Well, from opening credits, it says like it shows a bunch of stuff like starring blank and blank, and it says a British villain. So you know you're expecting a British villain going into this, and when you hear that he has a British accent, you're like, okay,
Hmm.
here's our British villain. I don't. They transcend the story very well. I don't know if they transcend the villain like super well because he is
Hmm.
definitely a dick, but and he tortures Deadpool a fair amount. Like he makes Wade into somewhat of a monster, but Wade never loses that sense of humor, which is a very big
Yeah.
plot point in this movie. Like, oh, something that never survives here is a sense of humor. And Wade, he keeps his sense of humor even though he's gone through all this traumatic
Yeah.
transformation. And he's like,
Yeah,
oh,
you can tell humor is his way of processing grief and trauma. Like, there's even
which
that
you
scene
can
where it's
relate to just as a human
yes.
being because like a lot of humans definitely, they interpret their trauma through humor. Like what's a way to make this traumatic event in my life not feel as terrible as it actually was? It's humor. That's the way you transpose that. You interpret that because you don't want it to feel as bad as it actually was.
Mm-hmm. No, fully. And I actually think they do a really good job at showing that just within, like, there's that scene where, like, oh, I had a worse childhood. No, I did. And, I think they kind of show you that without actually having to show you that. And I think, like, I think they do a really good job, especially in the first one. Not to say they don't in the second one, but I think they do a really good job at, like, showing behind the humor and behind the mask a little bit. Like, I think they do a good job at showing you Wade is a real person and he's feeling all these things, but he is hiding all of this with humor and laughter and puns and jokes. And I think you're able to kind of see the real, like, sometimes it's easy to forget that there is a Wade behind the Deadpool because, like, the like stench of Deadpool is so strong. It is so like potent. But I think they do a great job at showing the heart that Deadpool has, showing the heart this movie has. I think that's when this movie is at its peak, when he is dealing with certain feelings and certain emotions, and again, he's hiding it with humor, but like it's a very wholesome movie. That's when the movie's at its peak. I think it's when it's wholesome.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't know the complete origin of Deadpool in the comics, but the way they display it in this movie,
It's good.
like
Yeah.
it starts as an action comedy type film, but it transitions into kind of a almost horror comedy because
Yeah.
like the backstory of Deadpool, how he became Deadpool is such a
So bad for
horrific
him.
and
Yeah.
terrifying event that it
Yeah.
makes you just feel that much more for the character and like kind of want to relate to him. Like you want to side by this character because of all
Yeah.
the tragedy and horrific things he's been through. Like he has
I
been
agree.
through so much torture that you don't want this guy to lose. Like he's been through so much.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think I think it also just kind of adds to the larger universe that they're playing in. Like, obviously, this came out 2016, so this is around the kind of the same time as some of those prequel movies, like Apocalypse and stuff like that. But I think what their world is kind of dealing with the anti-mutant stuff, and it makes sense that people like the military will be trying to make human weapons out of the mutants. That's some of the stuff Logan was dealing with in past movies. So I think it kind of adds to that world a little bit, while also kind of staying in their own little box, which I think is fun.
Yeah, I like when this isn't present day opposed to the flashbacks, but when he's talking to Mega Cena Teenage Warhead, he's like, well, first of all, he's like, oh, Nega Teenage Sonic Warhead, do you want to switch names? I'm the like, yeah,
Yeah.
I would want that name too. That's cool as shit. But he's like, oh, what are you gonna do? Long Soul and Silence or Mean Comment? And she's just
Yeah.
like, you have me in a box here.
And I also like I love it's weird because they make fun of the X-Men a lot, but also they do feel like proper X-Men in this movie, in these two movies. Like it feels like, oh yeah, they're like, it's fun that they can acknowledge that an X-Men exists and that there's characters that we're not seeing going on missions and living in the mansion, and like we don't get to see a lot of just like the everyday life of the X-Men in the X-Men movies outside of, like, I guess Apocalypse kind of dives into that a little bit, but no, like it's fun. And like I don't know, like I like the Colossus is so weird because this is easily the best Colossus is in any of these movies.
Oh yeah,
Like
easily,
he's in
easily.
he's in X2, which he's nothing there. Then he's again in Days of Future Past, and he's nothing there as well. And it's weird that like Deadpool out of all movies is the one where Colossus is like, oh yeah, this guy's really cool.
They're both
And
Deadpools. He's awesome in
probably
both
most
of them.
people's probably most people's introduction to Colossus. I think it's mine. Like I knew of him before Deadpool, but I hadn't seen him in anything, not really. So crazy.
I definitely saw him in the previous X-Men movies before I saw the first Deadpool, but like,
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
as a
but like
staple character among the X-Men, definitely.
did you know like who he actually was though? Like you may have
No,
seen
no,
him,
that's
but
what I'm saying. Like, as a
yeah,
staple character among the X-Men, yeah, the Deadpool films are what make people realize who Colossus is.
yeah. And there's that really great moment. Like I know the movie like makes fun of it. I know it's meant to parody like superhero speeches, but I legitimately love the like 4 to 5 moments. Like 4 to 5. Like you don't always have to be a hero, but 4 to 5 moments in your life is what it takes. And it's like I know they're making fun of superhero speeches, but I guess I'm all just falling for that trope because I'm like, this is kind of I kind of love this speech. Like this is kind of fun. I kind of love that.
Deadpool just shoots them.
Oh, it's so good. It's like that gag is never not funny for me. Where like Colossus is like, I'm standing up for you, I believe in you, and Wade just constantly letting him down. Like it's they do this about like 4 to 5 times with these two movies, and they're always funny to me.
Yeah, I like how before it happened in the first movie, like the first time Colossus comes in, he's like, Wade, don't kill this man, don't do this. And then Wade just starts pounding on him, breaks his hand, breaks his other hand, then breaks a foot. He's like, all the
Yeah.
dinosaurs used to fear the T-Rex.
That's such a stupid
He just
line, but I
breaks
love it.
all his fucking bones. And he's like, oh, you ever seen 127 Hours Later? Spoiler alert! Which I've never seen that movie, but
I don't know what they're
I
referencing. No.
I feel like at this point, like anyone that hasn't seen that movie kind of at least vaguely knows what the movie is about. So when he cuts off his own hand, it's not like that huge of a spoiler. It's like, yeah, we knew that, like, yeah, someone cut off their own body part to escape whatever. Like, I don't know the specifics of that story, but I know like at least they're
Sure.
referencing that. Oh no, I
100%.
think a lot of the comedy in this movie is like some of it's on the nose, some of it might be over the head, but a lot of it's just like in that general vicinity of people will get it. And I think that's what makes this movie work.
Yeah, and I think like I've heard a lot of people argue that like oh some of it didn't age the best or like they're not as funny as it maybe what it was in 2016, but like that's kind of the I don't know, I kind of think that just happens. Like it
Yeah.
was using a lot of the tropes that were popular in 2016. It's no longer 2016. That doesn't make those scenes bad. They just aged a little bit and that's fine. They were really funny for when there's
It might
definitely
make it might in the future make more of the scenes more charming because of that. Like, oh,
yeah.
they've aged, but like, oh, this is such a charming thing.
Yeah, like I like a lot of the jokes do rely on a bit of pulp culture knowledge, right? There's jokes about what pulp culture was at that time. Like there might be something
Yeah,
when you're watching this
it's
and
like anyone that hasn't seen a Stallone film, and when
sure,
Wade is getting tortured in the facility, and he's talking to what was the woman's name? The main villain woman was it like Angel or something? But he's like,
something
what's
like
with the
that.
matches? Oral fixation or just a Stallone fan? And it's
Sure,
like if you haven't seen enough Stallone movies, that isn't going to be funny to you. But if you've seen enough
sure,
Stallone movies, that's going to be hilarious because he has a
sure,
match
and
or
like yeah,
something in
it's
his mouth like half of the movies he's in.
yeah, 100%. Like it's kind of like it's kind of like Ninja Turtles in a sense, where like some of the jokes in the '90s like Turtles movie I don't get because I wasn't a '90s kid. Like there's references to thing where like oh I bet that was huge in the '90s, right? So I don't know. Like and again I don't think that's a bad thing. It's just the art of movies, and you can look back and be like oh that's where we were as a culture back in 2016 or whenever it will be.
Yeah, I feel like it's at least going to be very big and impactful to at least a certain generation, which is enough in of itself. It doesn't have to be like
Yeah,
this massive event or like cultural impact to everyone because
sure,
that's not really what movies are about.
I agree.
All right, is there anything else we have to say about the first Deadpool film?
The first Deadpool. No, I mean, I would just say I'm really glad I revisited it because I feel like I had looking back on it, I was like, oh, that's a movie that everyone loves, and I still loved it, but I felt like I was kind of under like it's a little overrated kind of things, and I think rewatching it, I have learned kind of like, oh, this is why I did love this movie. Like it is very charming. It's very iconic. It's very I don't know. I feel like there is just something so energetic about this movie that I'm very glad I revisited it prior to going into Deadpool 3.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's probably one of my favorite comic book movies of all time, if I'm being honest. Probably one of my favorite comedies of all time.
It is
It
really
is
funny.
it's
Yeah.
hilarious. And I don't know if I mentioned this moment before, but when he punches Colossus in the dick and he's like, Dad? That's one of the funniest things to me too. I don't know why, but it's so fucking hilarious.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Oh, anyway, the first Deadpool is incredible, and if you haven't seen it, I don't know why you've listened this far, but you should check it out. But we're
It'd be
on to
pretty
the
crazy if
next.
they're like, I was just hanging around.
Yeah. But well, we're on to the next Deadpool film, Deadpool 2. Darren, what do you
Heck
think of
yeah.
this one? We actually watched this together just before
We
recording this.
yes, we sat down and watched, which is I think it was the first time we ever properly did it like this, where we watched a movie and then directly talked about it.
I think so.
No, this one I think is always just kind of gets the reputation of not as good as the first Deadpool. Like I feel like that's the thing everyone kind of thinks about this one. And I agree. I do think the first one's significantly better than this one, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. This is a conversation I've actually had about like The Boys, where it's like I think this season of The Boys is the worst season. I don't think that means it's bad, right? I just think the first one's better. That being said, though, what really stood out to me is what I really love about the first one is how intimate it feels, how small scale it feels, how personal it feels. Where I do feel like this one does lean more into the side of what we kind of know comic book movies to be: big stakes, big fight scenes, bunch of more characters, up the ante, up the things. But I still think it kind of has everything you love about that first movie. Like it has the funny quips, it has the outlandish scenes. The arms are getting cut off and things are happening, and Ryan Reynolds' humor is still so good. Like it's really I think even if you don't love this movie, I think it's going to be very hard for you not to have a good time with this one, just because Deadpool is such a contagiously fun character, why I think at the very least Deadpool 3 is going to be at least enjoyable. Like I feel like even if that movie isn't on par with these first two, like Ryan and Hugh's like dynamic is going to shine so bright. But no, I think this one's pretty solid. It's not my favorite comic book movie or anything. It's far from bad though. Like I think it's still a really charming, very fun superhero movie.
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't know if Deadpool and Wolverine is going to be better than, say, the first Deadpool. I wouldn't doubt if it's better than Deadpool 2, though, because, like,
Yeah.
Deadpool 2 is definitely, like, a lot of just Ryan Reynolds and Josh Brolin's interactions
Yes.
back and forth. Like, it's definitely a Deadpool and Cable film. And
Hmm.
Deadpool 3 is obviously definitely going to be a Deadpool and Wolverine film, which is
Yeah.
what makes me think, like, okay, was the first Deadpool just like this special thing in time, or are we going to get
Hmm.
kind of the Deadpool 2 hybrid in Deadpool and
Yeah.
Wolverine? Like, is it going to be the special thing like un- unto itself between this character in this film, and then we also have Wolverine going in, or is it just going to be like, oh, this is Deadpool and Wolverine?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and this is something we were kind of talking about when we had prior, like us starting the movie, was like, does Vanessa's death still hold true on rewatch? And I'll be honest, I do think rewatching it did kind of affect it a little bit, because the whole time while he's grieving, he's going through all this stuff. Knowing that she does live, I do think slightly affects the main like momentum while rewatching it. Not to say that's necessarily a bad thing, but you definitely be like, well, wait, it's fine. She comes back in the next movie or whatever, right? So I do think that also kind of affects a little bit of it and kind of your kind of intention into the movie. But again, like it's still like again, Ryan Reynolds is such a like just a commodity. Like you love watching Ryan and his character as Deadpool. And like again, it's such a charming flick, I feel like.
Yeah, definitely. I don't. I feel like the standout thing to me in Deadpool 2 is like it feels like such a small portion of the movie, but it's such an awesome portion that it's what I think of when I think of the movie. Juggernaut. Like Juggernaut is so awesome in this film.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, another thing done right by the previous movies, I feel like. Because, like, he's so, like, Last Stand the last time that we saw him? That was the
Yeah,
last
I
movie,
believe
right?
so. Yeah, and it was not nearly as good
Yeah,
as this.
he's so lame. Like there's that one scene where he's like, "I'm Juggernaut," like that is such an
The
iconic
Juggernaut,
scene.
bitch! And he
Like,
just
that's so
runs through a
good.
wall.
But that's it. That's like the only thing that makes him like cool in that movie. The rest is
Like,
kind
why
of
did you even cast
whatever.
Vinnie Jones in this role? Like, what was the point of this? Why
Yeah.
did you not do more with this character? And then Deadpool 2, it's like, oh, I don't really love Colossus, like, shooting an electrical tube up his ass at the end of this movie, but other than that, I love the Juggernaut in this movie. Like,
He's really fun. Yeah.
him ripping Wade apart,
Oh my
just
gosh. Yeah.
in 2, it's so fucking incredible. It's like, yes, that's the Juggernaut, baby. I love him
Yeah,
in this movie.
And the fact that you can just do something like that, like unfiltered, is really cool. Like, name another comic book movie where someone was ripped in two. Like, never. There's never been something like that. And there's like something refreshing to that, which might sound very.
That's kind of insane. It's 2024 and there has not been another comic book movie like that. That's kind of insane.
I think the
to
only
think
thing
about.
that comes close is like The Boys, right? Like I think The Boys does that kind of stuff pretty. Like Homelander lasered someone's Down Unders recently, and that's pretty crazy.
In terms of movies, though, like there hasn't been anything that has just like ripped someone in half or something, and that's kind of crazy to think about, given how like prevalent comic book movies are nowadays.
Yeah, and I think Deadpool 3 is the test for them, at least for Marvel, where I think this is their being like, will people show up at least within the MCU? Will people show up for a rated R MCU movie? And it seems
I think as long as it has like a story precedence, like there is reason for this to have this rating, people will definitely show up.
Yeah, we know Blade's looking to have a rated R rating.
Is Blade still happening? Is that really
it's
still
supposed
happening?
to be, but the director just left. So
what? I didn't even know about that.
Yeah,
the director
this
left
happened a
the Blade
ago.
film. The director left.
This is their second director, I think.
What?
A couple weeks ago, he left the project.
Dude, this is gonna take as long as The Flash did to come out. Then.
I'm at, not to get way off track, but I'm kind of at a point where I'm like, hey, Marvel, why don't you pause and like let it sit for a while and then come back in a couple years? Because
when you lose your director, that's kind of big, because like half of the time when you lose a director, you're gonna lose a few other like components of the film as well.
I mean, it's still on the docket for next year, and I know very much so it's not making that.
Yeah, if it lost a director recently, there's no way it's making 2025. Like they're gonna have to start from scratch, basically. Like even if they have the same crew, same actors, same actresses, everything like that.
Sure.
They lost a director, they're gonna have to start from scratch still. They're gonna have to start from like scene 1 up till the end. There's no way they're getting that done within a year.
Oh, it's no later than like late 26. I feel like.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. Losing that makes me worried. Like, what did they have to do to lose a director?
From my understanding, it was just like creative direction. There's like
that also scares me, because although I did really enjoy the first Ant-Man, I really, really still to this day, 9 years later, still wish we had gotten Edgar Wright's version of the first Ant-Man movie, because I love him so much as a filmmaker, and it's just so upsetting to me that we didn't get his vision of that movie, even though it's still a very good movie.
Yeah, not to like, I know you want to get back to like Deadpool, but like the story with Blade in the MCU has been very frustrating, because Kevin Feige didn't want to announce Blade. They weren't ready to announce it, but Bob Chapek was like, announce this, and this. Stuff that should not have been announced. Like Fantastic Four was in the same boat, where they were not ready to announce Fantastic Four, but they made them. So it was clear that they did not have creative passion when in the original run of that movie. And like my hope is like we can like pause, find someone who's passionate about making Blade, writers that want to write for Blade, and just make a low budget, small scale Blade movie, and that's it. That's what I would do personally.
Yeah, that simple. If only.
So Deadpool 2.
Deadpool 2 is starring Ryan Reynolds and Josh Brolin. It was great.
Thanos. Yeah. It's kind of actually crazy how, like, because like I remember that being a big deal. Like, what Infinity War came out 2018. This also came out 2018, right?
Yeah, they literally came out a month apart from each other. Infinity War
That's
came out in
crazy.
Infinity War came out April of 2018, and Deadpool 2 came out the month after, May of 2018.
You know, Josh was rolling in that dough.
Oh,
He was
dude,
having
he
a good
so
month.
was. Like, Deadpool even referenced him. Deadpool even called him in this film. He called him Thanos. Like, that's how much that man was
Yeah.
rolling in this dough. Like, he was just savoring Marvel.
Yeah, it's great, and I think he's great as both. Like, I
Oh, I
really
do
do. Like,
too. I think he's incredible in both roles.
yeah,
I think Josh Brolin just like as an entity unto cinema itself is a
he's really good.
marvel. Like he's such a good
He's a what?
actor.
He's a what?
He's a marvel. He's
He
incredible.
sure is.
He's
he's
awesome. Like Josh Brolin is
he's
great in anything he's in. Like from the Goonies to Deadpool 2, he's incredible.
Yeah, I know. I think he's amazing. And no, like I think Cable is such a fun character. Like they don't dive into like the Cyclops thing, which I'm fine with. Like I don't need them to. He's like these movies clearly never cared about Cyclops or Jean, so it's like I'm okay if you just he's just a time traveler in this movie, and I think his arc here is very simple. You've seen it 1,000 times, but like I think it works, and I think it's a good parallel for Wade, someone who had also just lost the love of his life, and I feel like he can relate a lot to Cable and what he's going through, and I think it really works.
Yeah, I don't think you need Cable being like Jeans and Scott's son weighing this
Yeah.
plot down because you never really get much out of Jean and Scott in these movies. Like they are kind
Yeah.
of integral part of some of these movies, but not really.
Hmm.
They're never really vital characters unto themselves. They never really feel like super important. And I'm
Yeah.
kind of
And
glad that the Deadpool movies they never really mention any character out of maybe Charles or Wolverine other
yeah.
than the characters it features themselves, like Deadpool, Cyclops, and Negasina, Teenage Warhead. Like,
Sure.
those are the characters they feature, they reference. They don't really weigh themselves down to these other characters like Scott and Jean and, like, any other characters that may be in the original X-Men trilogy, other than maybe Wolverine. They make references to him, obviously, but we're getting
I
him
love
back in Deadpool and Wolverine, which
we
pays that
are.
off.
There is such I love that cameo scene where it's like you can't afford any other, and it's just Beast closing the door with the cast. Like,
Yeah.
that is such a good cameo.
Yeah,
That's so good.
Peter Evans's Quicksilver is back there, and some other characters are as well, and it's like, okay, this is great. This is
It's
incredible.
so funny. Like I think they use it to their advantage. Like clearly they don't need the other X-Men, or they're not allowed to use them, or whatever it may be. And like they approach it head on, because again, that's what we'd be asking. If there's only those three X-Men, two X-Men in the thing, we'd be like, wait, where's all the other? Where are they all at? Like that's as fans what we'd be asking. And I think they do a great job at like announcing it head on, being like, hey, yeah, we weren't allowed. Moving on. Like it's so great.
Yeah, like in the first one, he's like, "Oh, what? Fox could only afford two X-Men,"
Yeah, it's
and then in the second one, he's like, "Oh, it's like Fox could only afford like three X-Men," and it shows like the other X-Men closing the door.
yeah, and there's three X-Men we really hadn't seen in the MCU up until this point. Like, well, I mean the ones from Wolverine, right? Like that girl was from Wolverine as well, or am I imagining that?
What do you mean from Wolverine? From the
Wasn't she?
Wolverine?
Yeah, the Wolverine, wasn't she in that movie and then moved over to this one, or am I imagining things?
Who were we talking about? Yumiko?
Yeah, wasn't she
Uh,
in there or no?
was she in the Wolverine?
I remember maybe I'm just racist. I'm really sorry if I.
I don't
You,
remember who that character was called.
I think
I
she
know what character you're talking about.
you can cut this out if it's no, just kidding. Yeah, I think that's her, isn't it? Yumiko from X-Men
I
movies.
think so. I think so. I think
Okay,
so. I think you're right.
okay.
Yukio, yeah, she was in the Wolverine.
Yeah, okay. I didn't imagine that. I was like, I think I remember her being in both, and us talking about that in that last one. But
She definitely was in the Wolverine. She was the main female in that movie.
okay, whew. That would look pretty bad on me if it wasn't.
No, you're good. I don't have to edit any of this out. You were
Let's
correct.
go. Yeah, okay, that's her. And and then she's a bit different here, but you could just be like timeline change. She's different in this timeline or whatever. So,
I mean, she's definitely different from the Wolverine
yeah,
timeline too.
very
The Deadpool
like.
timeline.
I mean, was she a mutant in
I was about to say
that
we didn't
movie?
even know she was a mutant in the Wolverine,
Yeah.
did we?
Yeah, so they can just be like new timeline, and like they even like address that in these head on, where it's like which Xavier is it? Is it this one or this one? And I was like, all right, that's funny. They
That's what
address
I'm
it's
curious
really
about.
confusing.
Deadpool and Wolverine. Like, obviously, it's a different Wolverine than like this timeline of Deadpool. Like, so what is going to be different about this Wolverine than like what Deadpool knew about his universe's Wolverine? Because
Sure.
obviously, he would have had to at least known of his universe's Wolverine before he passed. Like, if considering, I'm assuming that Deadpool's universe's Wolverine was the Logan's universe. Like, I'm assuming that's just like within the same universe. I don't know though. Is it?
Yeah, they could like they have the opportunity to kind of clean up the timeline or explain the timeline of the Fox movies in this one if they want to. Like they have that opportunity here. Like I don't hate the idea that Logan's a bit separate from the other X-Men movies. Like a lot of people have that theory, and I think it works if you want it to. But yeah, like maybe because I think we're going to be diving into the lore of Logan just a little bit. Like obviously this isn't Logan's Logan, but I think we might see like X-23 show up and address the death or whatever.
I mean, I feel like Logan and both the Deadpool movies kind of take like apart from all the other X-Men movies, so it's kind of like they could do whatever they wanted to. Like they
Yeah.
could connect it to the greater X-Men universe if they really wanted to, if they wanted to distance themselves from other properties, or they could just take it and roll with it from,
Or
all the universe were establishes to.
and like this is also Deadpool. Like Deadpool can really do whatever it wants. Like it
Yeah,
can.
yeah.
Like it's always very hard to be like, wait, what is actually canon with Deadpool? You know what I mean? Which is fun. But like, yeah, I mean, even in Deadpool 3, like they reference like the death of Logan, and they're like, oh, cool, so that is canon here. But then you can be like, well, he also knows about like the MCU and like Disney and stuff like that. So it's like we don't really know. He could have just seen another alternate Logan or whatever.
Yeah, from the get-go, they reference the death of Logan. Like the opening scene of
Yeah.
Deadpool 2 is Logan dead on the
Yeah.
on the branch from the movie Logan.
Yep, crazy. They just didn't care. They're like, this is funny, let's do it.
Deadpool's like, yeah, I knew it from the get-go that he was dead. He was gone.
Yep. And also, I think this movie, like, I actually think this makes Deadpool 3 feel, I don't know, so much more satisfying, because it kind of feels like it tees it up. It feels like it's almost teasing that Logan will be back. And, like, Wade constantly references Logan within these movies. He wants to team up with him. He wants to have his fight. He's doing all these things. So I think, like, there's that scene. I don't know if it's in Deadpool 3 because I don't remember seeing it, but there's that scene where like someday I'm going to come back to you and I'm going to ask you to come back and you're going to say yes. And there's that scene, and it's just like how they paid that scene off. Like no one thought they would, but they did. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, I think it has to be Deadpool and Wolverine that like it finally comes to, like Deadpool comes to maybe Logan's grave or something, like, yo, I'm bringing you back to come back to team up with me. But yeah, no, like Deadpool 2 opens with the like death of Logan. He's like, oh, Logan, blah blah. You thought you could kill yourself and be more popular? Here I go, I'm killing myself.
Yeah.
And then in the first Deadpool, when it's the second or third scene of the movie, and he's just sitting on the bridge, and it's playing like the Spice Girls song or whatever. I want to shoot, baby, and it's showing the like
Absolutely.
Logan like little toy or whatever. It's like, yeah, they've teased us for so long that we need to get Deadpool and Wolverine. Like it needs to happen.
It's weird because like, the Fox universe kind of feels like it's had 5 different endings, right? Like you could say like Days of Future Past was kind of an ending, or felt like it was kind of an ending to the franchise, and then it's like nope. But then it's Dark Phoenix, but nope, it's actually Logan, but actually it's New Mutants or whatever. And now it feels like, no, actually, it's Deadpool and Wolverine. But even then, it's like, but Hugh Jackman seems to be rumored for Secret Wars. So is this actually the ending to the Fox universe? I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah. Is this actually the ending? Who the fuck knows at this point? I've
Absolutely
loved the
insane.
first Deadpool movies though. Aside from X-Men Origins Wolverine, I really liked the Wolverine. I loved Logan. So I am very much looking forward to Deadpool and Wolverine, the third installment in the
Yeah.
Deadpool franchise. I
Yeah,
cannot
this
wait
is
for it.
I think this might especially this month. It's kind of hit me like, oh my god, it's here. Like I think that might be the most excited I've been for a movie in quite a while. Like I'm really really excited.
Yeah, I can't even think of like how excited I've been for a movie since. Like, what is the last movie I've been excited this much for?
Hmm.
Because I know you're a huge Disney fan, and probably your answer is Inside Out too, right?
I mean, I thought my most anticipated was Inside Out, but I think this month proved it's not. Like I'm more excited for Deadpool. I'm trying to think back to
Well,
mine
I
too.
mean, before Deadpool 3, was it Inside Out too? Like,
Yeah.
I cannot think of like
Um.
what movie have I been this excited for beforehand since Deadpool
I
and
mean,
Wolverine? Like,
Spider-Man was pretty high up on my list. I was pretty excited for
that
Spider-Man
was a
3.
year. That was over a year ago, though. That's kind
Yeah,
of
that was
insane to think
21.
about.
That was 2021, 2022, 22. Yeah.
Oh, you mean No Way Home?
Yeah.
You don't mean Across the Spider Verse? You mean No Way Home?
No Way Home was pretty high on my list.
Oh, No Way Home
I
was pretty
mean,
high on my list too. That was a year and a half ago,
yeah.
and yeah, I don't think there's been anything like between No Way Home and Deadpool and Wolverine that I've been more excited for. Like
Yeah.
I was pretty excited for Maxine, which came out recently. It came out think July. I want to say July 5th, and I saw it recently, and it was pretty good. It wasn't like incredible, but in terms of just Marvel, I think yeah, Deadpool and Wolverine is my most anticipated since.
Yeah. I think there's just a lot going for it. And also it really helps. We've talked about this on these past ones. This year, this is only the second MCU project we've got in 2024. It's been Echo and it's been this. And I think that's really helped the hype for Marvel. Like, we got the Agatha trailer this week, and it feels like, yes, there's a lot of hate for that show, but it feels like, I don't know, I feel like I'm way more excited for that than I would have been if we've gotten, like, 3 or so other projects this year. Like, it's like, oh my gosh, MCU's kind of back, so I'm excited.
Wow, Agatha. Yeah, I probably won't watch that, but I'll definitely watch Deadpool and Wolverine, so I'm very excited.
It actually might be up your alley in terms of, like it seems like it's a full-on horror show, which is kind of
Agatha?
wild.
Really?
Agatha, yeah, it's like, yeah, it has very strong like horror elements. Like I would at least check out the trailer. It's got like possession and stuff like that. Like my mom was watching it and she's like, ew. So
I'm gonna be honest.
I,
I haven't had like Netflix in the past couple years, but I really need to watch the Mike Flanagan horror shows on it.
I've heard they're really good.
Oh,
Not up my alley, but
I
I've heard
believe it because I haven't seen a Mike Flanagan movie that I've hated. But
they're amazing. Yeah.
yeah, I definitely believe it. Like Midnight Mass and whatsoever that he's made.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe it.
Absolutely.
But we'll see. Anyway, I guess we'll be back next time talking about some X-Men New Mutants
New Mutants.
before Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yep.
Oh man,
I hope
cannot believe that we
because
are.
I really
Yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say I loved it last time, and I hope I still.
Oh, you
like
loved it? You loved it?
Love's a strong word, but I
That
really
is a
enjoyed it
strong
last
word.
time.
That is quite a strong word.
I remember thinking it was kind of fun.
I can't believe it's been over 2 weeks since I've seen like anything to do with the New Mutants. Like isn't anything I've
Mhm.
loved with the X-Men.
I mean, that was your first episode, right? That was the first episode of the show. Was a New
That
Mutants,
was the
right?
first episode of the show, and it's been over, not over, but almost 4 years from now, which is kind of crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah. And we didn't just talk about New Mutants on that episode. We just talked about mediocre comic book movies in general.
Oh,
So go
how dare
check that
you?
out if you haven't. But but anyway, for now you can
Bye.
revisit episodes of That's So Random on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube at the Red Arrow, wherever you find your podcast episodes. And
Absolutely.
Darren, is there anything you want to plug before we go?
Yeah, you can check out the Pipeline podcast over on my main channel, or we have a whole channel now dedicated to the Pipeline podcast. This week we're talking in actually kind of a little bit of preparation for Deadpool 3. We're talking about some of our favorite MCU moments as kind of preparation for the next big MCU event. And me and Brayden have an episode coming up in a couple of weeks on there as well. So if you want to see more of me and Brayden
Ooh.
talking about some stuff, I think it's the last episode of this month. So you can go check that out in the future.
What a tease. But for now, that's been That's So Random, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.